this game, the Blue Critter Adventure. So, if we're thinking about out-of-game features, we're thinking about the menus and the options that we had. What options did we have? We had immediately the option to make things quieter, which was very important. The fact that you had a slider, which was really great. The fact that it wasn't just like buttons is better than enough. Did it give us anything else? I would say the fact that you had these this little like gallery, that was something completely, you know, thrown in there that like didn't have to be there, but it's nice. It's nice to have a sense of achievement and have like something to possibly also give you some replayability after you've played through it once and like, oh, I want to find all these gallery creatures now. Maybe a reason to go back. So for that reason, I would say that there wasn't a way to rebind controls, and to me it would have been important to also have upwards movement on W. That was the only thing that was missing. Like the only thing control-wise that ended up confusing me is that I had to sometimes use the arrow buttons to climb up and down. If I would have been able to climb up and down with W and S, I probably wouldn't have any issues. You know, being able to choose other optional, you know, button layouts or something would have been really nice, but it wasn't like necessarily super expected. I think we reached more than just the bare minimums for this because of the gallery, and I thought the gallery was pretty cool. It's more than just bare bones. I expected a little bit more out of it. Let's do 3. Let's do 3. Okay, audio-wise. So we had a bunch of different kind of sound effects. A lot of them, like the background music was very atmospheric. It definitely set like the mood for everything. Wait, why is this not full screened? Window capture. I enjoyed all the like different kinds of sound effects. Like every creature really had its own thing, which is like a lot of work. I like understand that. There were quite some bugs that had to do with like sound overlaying and stuff. Can I go that way? No. Okay. It also says hey every time it stops. Interesting. And we have these things in our gallery. But it definitely overall positively added to the game. So I will say I will give this a 3 as well. Visually, I thought it was very unique. It reminded me of Angelina Kana, which is like just a weird reference, but just having like the realistic pictures mixed in with like this like weird creatures, although the creatures were partially made of realistic looking creatures and partially not. And then like it was just very horror, very like alien in a way. It was very unique and I liked it a lot. I think I had a lot of issues, and it's kind of more of a gameplay thing, but it ties into visuals. I had said that like I had issues understanding what was an enemy and what wasn't. There were a lot of things flying around that I just became paranoid about hitting, and that ended up, you know, making me more stressed and like also make more mistakes because I'm trying to avoid things that aren't even enemies, if that makes sense. Or when I was swimming, I was trying to avoid things because I was like, I'm not sure if they're hitting me or not. Sometimes you like things did damage to you that didn't read like they would do damage to you, and so I think working with some sort of outline or something for enemies, or just having like a unified color for them, like everything that hurts you is red, for example. It's a very simple thing that like people recognize. Everything that can heal you is green or something. It's very recognizable color schemes. Having something like that would have helped a lot. When I went by the logic of, okay, everything that has teeth can hurt me, that worked a bit. Although still there were things that weren't exactly lined up with that, or things that hurt me that didn't have teeth, stuff I mean bees didn't, for example. Yeah, there was just a lot going on a lot of the time. It was very hard to tell what I could like bump into and what not a lot of times, because you use this like more organic sort of levels, you know, with these like sandy beaches and these rocks that are kind of like weirdly shaped, and it didn't just have hard edges and stuff, which is, you know, is more organic, and it does add overall to this whole like art style that you have, and I really like that art style. I think it's a very unique thing, but it also like it kind of shows what the problems are with this sort of art style, because it, you know, you do have to put in extra work to make sure that the players understand what they can interact with and whatnot. You know, what am I going to bump into, what's going to deal damage to me, and so forth. The weird triple grasshopper thing that like sprayed those spores that did damage is very hard for me to tell that I was taking damage from them, first off. Second off, I wasn't sure if it was just like an area that did damage, or if it was specifically the tiny spores that had to hit me to deal damage, if that makes sense. Because the spores were kind of like, they're kind of like half transparent, so it felt like they would have been easy to dodge, like they would have had a very small hitbox, but I still got hit sometimes, or I did, like, I made the noise of getting hit when it didn't seem like any of the spores specifically hit me. So that was a hard thing to read as well, if that makes sense. And in general, I think when my character takes damage, there should have been some sort of special effect. You know, maybe my character flashing, or you know, some sort of screen shake, or my character even just turning red for a second or something that indicates like, hey, you've specifically just been hit, and not just the sound effect. Sometimes it can take you out of the like game, so it definitely shouldn't affect like my controls necessarily, at least not in this game, because I feel like sometimes I took damage and it kind of like bounced me away from the thing that did damage to me, which makes sense because you don't want them to keep colliding, because then like as soon as they collide, I take damage, right? So if I keep colliding, I'll just like die instantly. So you want me to not be colliding anymore, but there has to be some sort of like, just like if you think about Super Mario, some sort of, you know, invulnerability state or something that tells me like, hey, you're in a state where you just took damage, get to a place where you're not, that you're safe in the next half second or whatever it is, a second, so that we can continue playing. There's a lot of different creatures in the game. There's a lot of different like effects and stuff going on. I think it became an issue a lot of the times because there were so many different creatures, and like I had to learn for every creature, are you something that does damage to me? You know, you're a worm that I can stand on, but now you're, you know, the bees will hurt me unless I have pollen on me, and now they won't, but like they don't physically look different when they don't hurt me. It's just that I don't, you know, interact with them anymore and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of it was not like not easy to read. And I hope you understand what I'm saying when I say read, as in like when I look at this drink, I can read from the drink things about it, right? That like the drink wants me to understand about it without me having to read on the label what's in the drink. I can be like, okay, it seems like there's some sort of milk in this drink. It seems like, you know, it's a pretty light drink, so there's probably no coffee in it or anything, because it isn't. And it seems like it's very cold because there's like water coming off of it, and you know, I can see some ice floating in it and stuff. These are things that I can read about the drink, like without having to know what's in it, if that makes sense, without having to get it explained to me. That's what read means. I hope that makes sense. I don't think it's a 4. I had a little too much issues thinking, or you know, interacting with things for a 4. It definitely added overall positively to the game, but it also subtracted from the game because it was hard to read a lot of the things because of this unique style, and there wasn't enough focus on, you know, kind of being able to read things despite it being complicated, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna give it a 2.5 for those reasons. Okay, now finally gameplay, and I have most to say about gameplay. I've already mentioned some things like enemies being hard to read, there being so many different creatures, but like some of them were enemies, some of them weren't. Not being specifically able to you know, read when I'm going to take damage from like the spores, for example. A lot of this goes into like gameplay and like how hard you want to make the level. You know, you did have like these health packs that gave me all of my health back, which was, I think it was all my health, like a full heal every time. It might not have been, but felt like a full heal, which is very important because The kind of game that you have right now is that I kind of have to run into things to understand what they are, if that makes sense. And sometimes I'm going to run into things regardless of if I want to or not. From what it seems like, the enemies kind of ping around the level kind of randomly, which is good because it gives some replayability because it's different every time. But if I'm thinking about those, like that one level where I had to go up to where the spider was, and there were these giant like bird creatures flying around, if that bird creature decided to like go along the path that I was in and I couldn't get out of its way fast enough, it will push me away and it will push me into something and it will screw up my day. The game is kind of like, you know, try and fail and then succeed until like, or try and fail until you know what you have to do to succeed. And you know, therefore giving a lot of health packs was important. Tutorialization in general I thought was kind of the weakest part of this, and like the controls. I like that in the menu that you got to, you know, you got to walk around and you got to you know, go select, you know, what you're gonna do. But if I just boot up the game and I see, okay, something about zooming in and out, I don't know, that doesn't do anything when I press the buttons right now. So when I'm seeing the buttons, I want to press them and see what it does immediately. If it doesn't do anything, then I haven't learned what it does, if that makes sense. Like, I might be able to remember later that it's a thing, but if I never get reminded that it's a thing, I'm not going to remember. And if you weren't here in my chat telling me what to zoom out, then I would have struggled a lot more with those bigger levels. I don't think the game benefits from being able to zoom in, other than just seeing the creatures up close, which is like more of an art thing. There's not a lot of benefit that you get from playing the game up close like that. So I think the game would have been fine just always playing it zoomed out. Every time I joined a different little level, I had to like make my camera big again because there's no reason for me not to, right? It's like there's so much happening on the screen in every level that I have to be able to see everything that's gonna like come my way. That gets taught at the beginning and then it doesn't get brought up again later, which I think was extremely important to bring up later again. It's very important to have people play test your game before you release it for these exact reasons, to kind of see, okay, what are the controls that they're specifically struggling with? You know, are my players learning these things without me telling them, right? When you have your players just playing it, make sure you don't say anything so that you know exactly, okay, what is it that they're really not understanding? Like when you were watching me play at the beginning, I was really not understanding that jumping into that first hole as a spike ball kills me, because I like the way it was worded. To me, it sounded like, oh no, if I fall into this you know, if I fall down, I need to be a spike ball so that I don't die, and I still died. So I was like, this doesn't make sense to me, and I kept trying it. And you could see immediately, like, oh, okay, that's something that needs tweaking, because, like, you know, there are players that don't quite understand it. Obviously, if you just have one player playing it, that's not going to be, like, enough to base your opinion on how much of a problem it is. But, you know, optimally, when you make a game, like a small game, and it's going to be free and stuff, and you're going to, you know, you're not expecting to get thousands of players playing it, maybe just like 100 or so. You don't want 1% of those players, even if it's just one player, or two players. You don't want 2% of your players to not be able to play it because they didn't understand the first thing that you taught them. Having people come in and play it before you release the game, and kind of watching them without saying anything, is super important. Because basically, you could also see, if you hadn't said anything, how long would it have taken me to understand what it is you're trying to teach me? If that makes sense. Or if you hadn't said anything, how long, if at all, would it have taken me to understand that I can press O to zoom out? These sort of things, right? Maybe there's a certain moment that you'll realize, oh, you know, at this moment, players realize, okay, they can't do this or they have to do this. And then you can say for yourself if that's like too late, or if you know, and if it's too late, you want to teach it earlier. Tutorialization is like one of the easiest things to get wrong or the easiest things to mess up on. Shovel Escape, the game that I've made, is not great at tutorialization. I didn't have a lot of places where I could have triggered the different buttons that I wanted to teach the player, and I didn't provide an environment for the player to learn these things without, like, you know, getting stressed out by other things. And that led to a lot of players quitting before they really learned all the things that they could do in the game, if that makes sense. Like, I think I would have probably, like, quit the game, or at least quit the levels that I was trying to beat a lot faster if I didn't know that I could zoom out, because that made such a huge difference in, like, the difficulty of the game. It was so much more difficult when I was zoomed in. My game was the same, and it comes down to tutorialization. Like, does the player understand all the things that they can do to succeed? And yeah, just making sure that the player will get those tools when they need it. So, everything being said, I feel like gameplay-wise, there's a lot of depth to it, but I was very confused with the controls. I could not play with the arrow keys and the mouse, and also hit space, and also hit E at the same time. It's just not possible. Having more optional buttons for that, like, you know, maybe jump is on, like, numpad 0 or something, or jump is just on up. These things would help a lot. Random camera filter. All right, 6, 7, 8. Great. We are a child. I really like that you had one big level that you could get to. You had to collect different, like, beans to, or, you know, take beans at different times that made you, like, bigger or smaller, or, you know, jump faster, jump higher, or whatever. So I would have given it a well-made aspect of the game, because there's so many different layers to it. You have the different forms, you have, like, different levels, you have, like, different ways of, like, moving. You had, like, top-down movement and all these different things. But because I struggled a lot with it, I gotta give it, like, it's like almost an oof for me. It's like 1.5. I'm gonna end up giving it 2. That is the conclusion of that. So now if we grab these, we drag those down, we end up with an average of 2.625, or 66%. There we go. Now we can do the German whispers that we have sent in.
Heute spielen wir mit unseren Bauklötzen und unseren Bagger. Das hört sich doch toll an, oder?